So welcome to today's webinar, Decarbonizing NYC Summer of Solar, hosted by NYC Accelerator. We have three quick housekeeping items before we get started today. First, please note that this webinar is being recorded and we will circulate a link later today. Second, all attendees will be muted throughout the event. If you have any questions, please direct them to the chat box on the right side of your screen. We will save time at the end to answer your questions. Third, and finally, if you indicated interest in a free solar feasibility assessment during registration, we are in the process of following up with you. If you didn't indicate interest but would like to start working with NYC Accelerator, you can let us know through a brief form. I will drop the link in the chat in a couple minutes. We have a great presentation lined up today. Our presenters, Jose Galvez Contreras and Saad Khan, will introduce you to NYC Accelerator. Then they will move on to discussing all things solar, solar in NYC, solar technology and viability, solar cost and savings, and then they'll share a few case studies. We'll save time at the end for questions, as I just mentioned. Without further ado, I'll hand it over to Saad.
Hi, good morning, everybody. I'm Saad Khan, and I'll start off with giving everyone a program overview of the New York City Accelerator program. Next slide, please. So what is the New York City Accelerator? It's a New York City program to help control costs, meet compliance requirements for local laws, boost building performance, increase energy savings, and reduce carbon emissions across New York City buildings. The New York City Accelerator provides free technical guidance to help the market transform our buildings on how our buildings operate and are built. It identifies building upgrade projects to help meet emissions limits established under the Climate Mobilization Act and other local building energy laws. It offers no-cost building operator trainings and supports the green workforce development. It connects building decision makers directly with service providers to implement decarbonization projects, and helps buildings identify applicable financial incentives and financing, such as the New York City Accelerator PACE program. Next slide, please. So how does the program work? It's eligible for any privately owned New York City buildings that are over 5,000 square feet, and this includes new or existing construction. Smaller buildings are referred to partner organizations. And the way it works is that you simply give us a call or drop an email to get connected with a dedicated account manager for your property and receive objective advice customized to your needs. There's no cost or sign up or commitment or catch of any kind when you choose to participate in this program. So how can the New York City Accelerator help you? This is what you can expect to experience when you participate in the program, though each participant's journey might look a little bit different based on their needs. We customize our services to different types of building stakeholders, such as owners, operators, or property managers, and their specific needs. For example, some buildings may only need compliance assistance. There's no limit to the number of consultations. The New York City Accelerator is here to help buildings every step of the way through upgrades, financing, and even project follow-up. So just to distinguish what we do and what we don't do, the program offers free expert advice to accelerate energy efficiency and decarbonization projects. However, we do not replace or compete with service providers. We don't do energy audits, feasibility analysis, but can connect you with service providers who do provide those services. Next slide, please. Next, I'll be talking about solar in NYC specifically. So the solar program model works such that it's helped more than 200 NYC buildings to install solar so far. We start off with a solar feasibility assessment, which leads to a tailored solution for your building, and then explore each financing and incentive schemes, as well as run competitive procurement bids. Once the project is agreed upon, the program will also support you through the permitting and installation phases of the solar system. So the current status of solar in New York City is shown via this graph. As you can see, the solar costs have declined dramatically in the recent decades since 2010. But despite the low cost, New Yorkers still face a lot of barriers, such as construction red tape, there's complexity for multifamily buildings, and a dense urban environment. Next slide. So why is solar important today? This pie chart on the left shows that the emissions in New York City primarily come from buildings other than any other source, such as transportation or waste. The map on the right-hand side, it shows that there are existing fossil fuel powered plants all over the city that are mostly located within low-income areas or communities of color. By going solar, we address both equity and the environmental concerns. And the New York City Accelerator Solar Program is here to help buildings and property owners achieve that goal. Solar is also good for a green economy. New York City has one of the world's oldest electricity grid infrastructures. Solar helps reduce the peak demand on it, and the distributed resources produced on site also help reduce fossil fuel usage. Additionally, solar installations are as they become more prevalent, they advance the green job economy and help create jobs right here at home. And then finally, going solar because it's required. As part of the Solar Climate Mobilization Act introduced in 2019, buildings must have a green roof or a solar energy project for new buildings and major renovations. It is now a requirement as part of the law. Therefore, the New York City program exists today to make this possible for all New Yorkers. And with that, I'll pass it off to Jose to cover solar technology next.
Hi, thank you so much, Saad and Natasha. My name is Jose Galvez, and I am a solar specialist through the New York City Accelerator. And right now, I'm going to introduce you a little bit to the basics of solar energy technology. So essentially, how the solar energy works is in New York City. There are two, I want to preface this by starting that there are two main parts or two main technological equipments of a solar energy system, the panels themselves and an inverter. So how it happens is that you mount the panels on top of the building's roof, and then the panels will absorb energy from the sun, which will then be converted into electricity. Once that electricity is being converted by those panels, it is sent down to the inverter, which is the number 2 on this graph. And that inverter converts that direct current electricity that is being generated by those panels into alternative current. That alternative current then is sent back down to the grid, and a meter is used to track how much electricity your panels or your system is producing. The grid then will credit you back that electricity on your energy bill. Next slide. So the basics of solar. So usually solar panels come with a 25-year warranty, and they work best on your roof. So if you have a roof that is anywhere between 0 to 5 years, that's excellent time to go solar. Or if you can track if the roof is in good conditions, that's also a good time to go solar. But believe me, the 25-year warranty will be outlived by the panels, because solar energy technology is one of the best technologies out there, in my personal opinion, in terms of renewable energy, because that technology will last you over 35, 40 years. And I've seen panels that have been still operable at 50 years of lifespan. But the 25-year is what you will receive in terms of warranty for the solar panels. Solar energy systems also require no maintenance, very, very little maintenance. So once you place the panels on top of your roof, we do suggest that you go out to the roof and see the system is working well, if there's anything that it doesn't look wrong, once or twice a year. However, for the most part, once you place the panels, they will be producing electricity, and you can track that also remotely via an online system that you can track each individual panels. And you can do so too through the inverters. Solar panels do require direct sunlight, so it is best to place solar energy systems where there is little shade or no shade, and where there are not many obstructions from the buildings adjacent to where you're putting that system, or in the building itself, or no trees. And in New York City, unfortunately, right now, the technology has not been developed that battery backup makes economic sense. So they tend to be grid connected. So as we said, the solar energy system will be placed on top of your roof. that electricity will be converted from direct current to alternative current through the inverter and sent back to the grid, where you will receive credits on your bill for having installed solar. Next slide. So there are three types of solar installations that work in New York City. The first one is a ballasted array. The ballasted array are very low profile solar energy systems that require no roof penetration, so no drilling, no nothing that will, create any holes on your roof. They're cheaper and easier, but they tend to work best in large spaces. So if you have a large roof, this installation would be strongly suggested if you're just trying to offset the common area or enough electricity to reduce 100% of your energy bill for the common area of the space. And this one, again, is really easy. If you need to do some repairs on the roof, you can move the solar panels out because they are just held down with cinder blocks and the mounting structure. So you can just remove them and then do the work that you need to get done. The second type of installation is what we know as a planar array. If you want to maximize the solar production, this one would be the recommended solar energy system, because the panels are mounted on a roof structure, on a solar energy system structure, and there is no inter-row spacing compared to the ballasted array. However, they tend to be a little bit more expensive depending on how big or the size of that system it would be. They work best for space constrained roof, any roof that is mid-size, or if you want to maximize the solar potential, and you get much more solar production. And you will have to drill and anchor that mounting system on your roof. So this one, if you are ready to go solar, it's best that you make sure that your roof is in perfect conditions, because in order to do roof work after, you will have to dismount the whole system to do the work and then put it back in. So it's really recommended that you are 100% sure that your roof is in excellent and prime conditions to go solar. And the third type of installation, which you can see this is what we commonly see around New York City, are the canopy systems. And I say commonly because that's what is visible to the eye. These ones are raised 9 to 13 feet above the roof. So it's basically creating some form of structure, like a shading structure for your building, and you can cover most or all of the entire roof with this type of system. So if you want to really maximize the solar potential and want to make use of the roof space, then a canopy system would be recommended. This one tends to be a little bit more expensive, but again, you are allowed to use all of the roof with this type of system. Next slide. And the reason why I said that you're allowed to use most of the roof is because if you were to put a ballasted array or a planar array, it is required by the New York City Fire Department that you have a 6-foot path landing from front to end of the roof. In case of emergency that the fire department needs to access that roof, you need to be able to allow space for a ladder to go in and the fire fighters to go back and forth on that roof. So with a ballasted and a planar array, you have to allow for that space to be open in case of emergency and any access point on the roof. With a canopy on the other side, you may use the entire roof, because as the system is raised 9 to 13 feet above the roof ground, you're still creating that space underneath, so the fire department can still pitch a ladder and be able to access the roof no matter what. Thank you. Next slide. So now my colleague Saad is going to guide you guys through a viability study.
Okay, so these are just the basics of what would make a building viable for solar. Ideally, we want a large available roof areas that receive direct sunlight with minimal shading from near and far objects on the horizon. It's preferred that the roof of the building has a long life ahead of it, and that all the mechanicals such as the HVAC units, vents, pipes, etc., are all clustered in the northern sections of the roof. And finally, as Jose mentioned earlier, there should be a 6-foot wide fire path along the perimeter of the roof as well for the access for the firemen to get up on the roof. Next slide, please. The New York Accelerator program will do an initial roofing screening by doing a Google Maps desktop assessment, and we'll ask you about the roof age and its condition. Once we determine that the roof is feasible, we can then work on the technical design of the solar structure and the system, and also do a cost-benefit analysis of the IRR and the payback. Once you agree, we can then see competitive bids from installers on your behalf. Next slide. Okay, so we're just going to do a short quiz here to see if we can identify a couple of buildings that are suitable for solar. So write in the chat if you think that the buildings highlighted in yellow are good candidates for solar. And give it a couple of seconds. Okay, so for these two buildings, these are not good candidates, unfortunately. The buildings are shaded as they're sandwiched between two taller buildings on both sides, and they have small rooftops that probably could not accommodate solar panels or the required fire paths. Right, so this is the second building. And south is facing directly towards the bottom in all of these images. All right, so this one may be a good candidate. It's a long, narrow building with what seems to be have a parapet wall and an HVAC unit situated on the roof, but a canopy system raised above the roof that could probably work over here. And then this is the final one. Yep, that's right. This is a very good candidate. It's unshaded from the south side. It seems to have sufficient space for solar panel installations and also for the necessary fire paths along the perimeter. There's also a way to find your building solar potential. This tool by CUNY's website, this is the New York Solar Map. It's a handy tool that is aimed at consumers who are exploring solar options for their own properties, and it also provides other tools and guides. I'm now hand it back over to Jose for a discussion on cost savings from solar.
Thank you so much, Saad. So now we will be discussing the cost savings with solar. So first, I want to introduce you to what are the costs involved in solar energy technology. So once you decide to, you have agreed or decide that you wanted to go solar, some of the of what the pricing that you will be quoted will include what it is, the contract and screening, which means that the installer will initiate the contract with you, you make the down payment, and then they will do a site visit to your roof to see what type of system or what kind of system could be installed on top of your roof, as well as whether there are any structures that may be required, that may not allow for a panel to go in some place. It also includes the design and application of that process. So the solar energy system takes the solar energy system installation can take anywhere between 3 months to 6 months to complete the whole installation. And that's not because the installation itself takes a long time. The installation can take anywhere between 2 weeks to at most a month, but it is the permitting and the design application process that takes a long time. And that includes submitting applications to Con Edison, the New York City Fire Department, the Department of Buildings, if there is a landmark applications, etc. Then once the permitting is submitted, you have to wait for the approval of all of these entities, and then you can move forward with what it is called the system installation, and then the final inspection and sign off. All of this is to say that these are the costs involved in solar energy technology, and it means that the installer will be responsible to give you a turnkey installation once you have agreed to a contract with them. Next slide. So the cost of solar projects. The cost of solar projects are quoted on price on dollar per watt. So the smaller the system, the type of installation, so whether it's a planar array or or a canopy array or versus a ballasted will determine whether that price is going to be higher or lower. Usually the smaller systems and mechanically integrated, which are planar and canopy, as well as buildings that are putting solar energy systems taller than 7 stories, tend to be higher price. And there are some other requirements like prevailing wage, or if you have to come up with a creative design in order to allow for solar to be part of your roof structure. The price decreases when there is larger systems. So if you have a large ballasted or a large planar array, then the dollar per watt tends to decrease. Also, if you do bulk procurement, and you get to be able to secure a much more competitive pricing, because installers would be able to bid on your project as a whole, as well as if you have a solar ready design. So if you already like have an idea of how that works, and working with the New York City Accelerator is a good step to do so, because we would help you pre-design what we believe the solar energy system would look like. And then, as my colleague Saad said, we would help you seek bids on your project, so we will get much more competitive pricing for you. And so that's what tends to bring down the price. Next slide. So the good news is that if you choose to go solar, there are many incentives for which your buildings could be eligible for. As we know, New York City has all different types of buildings, including co-ops and condos, market rate rental buildings, as well as nonprofit buildings. Currently, there are really great incentives available to all buildings of New York City or New York State, first of all. The first one is the New York Sun Incentive. This is a solar rebate that is given to buildings who have chosen to go solar by the state. So let's say that you decide to go solar today, the state will help pay for your system at $1.20 per watt for solar installations that are anywhere between 0 to 200 kilowatt DC. And I believe most of the buildings in New York City will be within this range. So just right up front, you will be reducing that amount of what you would pay to the installer. So the total cost of the system minus the New York Sun Incentive rebate will allow you to just be responsible for the upfront cost. So the upfront cost completely reduces for you once you decide to go solar, because the state will help pay for that energy system with that rebate at $1.20 per watt if your solar energy system is less than 200 kilowatts DC. If it goes from 201 to 1 megawatt, then the state will help pay at $1 per watt for that installation. And any project above 1 megawatt will be allowed to have a rebate of 50 cents per watt. So that is really good news and exciting to go solar. We suspect that this incentive will be available throughout the end of this year, and possibly some funding allowing for the beginning of next year. And we cannot predict the future of how that would look like eventually, but that is what it is right now. So this is the perfect time to go solar for co-ops and condos as well. So for co-ops and condos, there are other additional incentives for which you could take advantage of. So once you have already secured the New York Sun incentive, then you can get what is called the federal income tax credit and the state income tax credit. These two are likely to be distributed amongst the shareholders of the building. And for the federal tax credit, at this time, if you go solar this year and are able to install the system by the end of this year for co-ops and condos, you will be able to secure 26% of the upfront cost. Remember, the total cost of the system minus the New York Sun incentive equals the upfront cost. So for the federal tax credit, you can claim 26% of that upfront cost as part of your income taxes for the shareholders. And for the state tax credit, you can claim 25% of that upfront cost. An additional incentive that is able to be secured by co-ops and condos is the property tax abatement. And that is 20% of that upfront cost that has to be distributed over a period of four years. So for co-ops, the building can take advantage of that property tax abatement if the co-op is paying property taxes. And for the condos, the shareholders themselves can take advantage of that property tax abatement if the shareholders are paying property taxes. For market rate buildings, the structure is similar, but a little bit has different nuances. So equal, you can still take advantage of the New York Sun incentive, and then your upfront cost is less than what the total cost would have been. And the market rate buildings can take advantage of the federal tax credit. And this one is known as the investment tax credit, but it's the same as the 26%. And in this case, a market rate building can secure the federal tax credit by putting a 5% down of the total cost of that system before the end of the year. So you don't have to have the installation completed by the end of the year. You can just have 5% down paid to the installer and prove that to the IRS, and then you can claim that 26% in 2022. Next year, this will go down in 2023, this will go down to 22%, and the year after at 10%. Additionally, the market rate rental buildings can take advantage of what is called the accelerated depreciation, and this is at the state and the federal level, as well as the property tax abatement if those buildings are paying property taxes at that given time. Unfortunately, not the state tax credit, because that's only available for homeowners only. And for nonprofit rental buildings, of course, you can take advantage of the New York Sun incentive, and then it could be possible that that type of building structure could take advantage of the federal tax credit, but the only way to do so is to set up a structure, a legal structure that will own the system, and they can take advantage of that as if it was an investment tax credit. Next. So saving money with solar on your utility bills, basically how it is done is that you will install the solar energy system on top of your roof, and then you will be able to reduce that electricity by offsetting in the first scenario the common area of your building, because in New York we tend to share one roof for multifamilies. It is important that is the type of account that's the first account that you try to reduce with solar. There's different structures for different types of accounts in New York City. So there's large commercial versus small commercial versus master meter. So we at the Accelerator will help you figure out what kind of benefits you will receive in terms of saving money with solar on your utility bills. Next one. So the best way to think about this and how to distribute the solar energy credits is that first, and the most common way to reduce your electricity bill with solar is by offsetting the common area usage of your building. So this includes laundry rooms, hallway lighting, elevators, anything that is public use that you use that solar energy system to offset that account first. But in case that you have a large roof and that you may be able to maximize the solar potential through installing more panels, it may be possible that you could reduce some of the electricity for the individual shareholders in that building. However, please, because I don't want to create confusion, you will not be able to reduce 100% of every individual's energy bill for that year. It will be a small portion because it is because we share one roof for multifamilies in New York City. Next slide. So in terms of how solar works in New York, in the payback period, you will often see that after all incentives, projects are being able to pay for themselves anywhere between 5 to 12 years with or without incentives. And the tax incentives all can make your system to have a major impact on how you paid it off, because you're seeing the benefits much more faster. But even so, with only the solar benefits, which means that no incentives are received besides the New York Sun incentive, the solar energy system will still be producing electricity, which means that at the same time, you will be offsetting your bill with that production. So you will see savings I would say anywhere after 13 years, maybe we can consider putting solar, but you will still be seeing that cash flow coming in even without having received all the incentives. Next slide. And how would you finance your solar energy systems is in two main ways. The first one is through a cash purchase, and a cash purchase means that you have reserves from your building that, you know, the board has some capital improvement money saved, and one of that may be that you want to electrify your building and solar is part of the equation. So you just have cash at hand, you pay for the system. That's the best way to see the returns right off the bat, because you don't owe it to anyone. It's just there, it's yours, and you start seeing the savings right as the installation is completed. The other way is that you can secure a private loan, and that you then make an agreement with your lender to pay that system over a period of time. And then eventually the system belongs to you completely, and then you start seeing the benefits from that space. So that's the cash purchase. The other way, scenarios on how you can pay for a solar energy system is through a third-party owned provider, which means you can do it through a power purchase agreement, in which you say, we don't have any money right now, we don't want to get a loan, we have other priorities, but we have an amazing roof that can have solar on top of it. So you will allow a third-party owner to come in, install the solar energy system on top of your roof. That power purchase agreement provider will own the system itself. They will claim the federal investment tax credit and the accelerated depreciation, while the building agrees to buy the electricity from them at a discounted price. On the building side, though, there are some benefits that you will see. One, you will be buying electricity at a discounted price from that third-party provider. Two, you will have a solar installed on top of your roof, which means that you can claim the carbon tax credit from the local law 97 that New York City is requiring now. And then three, you can claim the property tax abatement for that solar system on top of the roof, as well as the state income tax credit, which is really amazing. It's a win-win scenario. And then the third one is if your building does not allow for solar energy, or you don't want to enter an agreement with a third-party provider and do not have cash, you can still benefit from solar by subscribing to a community solar project somewhere in the city that has already large arrays, and that you can just subscribe your common area or even your individual accounts and get a discounted price for solar, for subscribing to solar energy on your electricity bill. Next slide. Okay, and now we're gonna dive into some solar case studies that the New York City Accelerator has worked on, or some other case studies to give you an idea of what solar looks like for some buildings that we either have worked on through the New York City Accelerator or through similar programs here in the city. Next slide. So this is Nostrand Avenue. This is actually a New York City Accelerator building. And basically, this is a market rate rental building located in Brooklyn. And it was a cash purchase. It's an 88.55 kilowatt DC system. And the upfront cost was about $190,000. But because the owner was able to secure all of the incentives, which means the federal tax credit, the property tax abatement, the accelerated depreciation at the federal and state level, plus the New York Sun incentive, they were able to see the return at a 3-year payback period. And they're seeing an annual savings of about $21,500 a year, with an estimated lifetime savings of $516,000 over 25 years. But remember, this owner probably will see much more than that. We just calculate up to 25 years because that's where the warranty ends. This is a ballasted installation, so it was a roof large enough to install ballasted system without needing to complicate it and putting a mechanically integrated installation like a planer or a canopy system. He wanted to go a little bit cheaper because he had the roof that was large enough. This system is offsetting 100% of the common area, and it's also community solar. So basically, they are providing electricity to some of the renters in the building, so they subscribe to their system, and now the renters are getting 10% discount from this solar energy system. And on a personal note, this was my very first project working in the field, And I am a subscriber of this system. And currently I have a negative $287 in my Con Edison bill, but I'm still paying to the power market, which is the third-party manager of the system, the fee, the difference of what I am saving. So I'm saving 10% on my electricity bill for having subscribed to this particular project. Next slide.
Wow, that's great, Jose. Before we move on to the next case study, somebody was asking how many units are in this building.
This building has a lot of units, has about over 50 units, I believe, but the solar energy system does not allow to offset over the 50 units. So the renters got the first dibs to subscribe to the building. So they were able to subscribe first, and then whoever didn't subscribe from that building, it was open to the public, and I am one of the public. So this is the Greenwich Village, the Greenwich building. This is located in Queens. This is a market rate building, and I want to make a public service announcement. We have solar tours coming up. Please subscribe to them, and we will be visiting exactly this site and seeing this building next week on the 19th. So please be at the look for an accelerator email that promotes this event, and hope to see many of you join us for this solar tour. This is a 31.18 kilowatt DC system. The expected payback period is 4 years with an upfront cost of $95,000. The annual savings for this building will be about $4,200. And it is also a ballasted array. And we will be seeing that this building will be offsetting 100% of the common area usage. So if you're available next week, please join us to visit this site. This is 838 Park Place. This is this was a project by our partner Solar One, and it was the first solar co-op project in the city, or Solar One's first, and I believe in the city too. And basically, this is a mid-sized co-op. It is a combination of a canopy array and a planar array. The canopy are the larger, taller structures that you see, where it covers the roof from front to end. And then the planar arrays are the smaller systems on the side that allow for the 6-foot path landing. And this one is a 91.45 kilowatt DC system, also cash purchase. The upfront cost was about $300,000, but the building is seeing about $19,000 in energy savings with an estimated lifetime savings of $540,000. The payback period is of 6 years, and it is reducing 90% of the common areas electricity usage. And again, it was like one of the first co-ops to have gone solar in the city. Next slide. And finally, this is a recent project that we did just release an RFP as of last year, and it's now under the permitting process. And this one is an affordable rental building. The owners are taking advantage of all of the above type of incentives. It's a canopy structure, is a cash purchase. The solar energy system, it's about over 400 kilowatts DC. The upfront cost is over $670,000, but the payback period will be of 2 years because they can take advantage of all of the incentive, including affordable housing incentives that are available. And the annual savings will be about $53,000 in energy savings, which means that the building will be offsetting about 55% of the common area electricity usage and seeing an internal rate of return of 32% after incentives. The estimated lifetime savings for this system is about $1,416,000, and they will be taking out of the atmosphere over 25 years, 3,026 tons of carbon emissions, which is really great because they can claim all of these credits in terms of local law 97. Thank you. And just a little bit of note of community solar, just in case that your building is not able to subscribe to install a solar energy system, you can still subscribe to community solar. So how does community solar work? So not everyone, as we said, can install solar energy because either the roofs are unsuitable, there is shading from all fronts, and or maybe large structure like tall roofs with very little space, or there is lack of ownership. We tend to share, we may not own, even if we want to install solar, we don't own the building's roof, so we are not able to make it possible. So that's when we choose to subscribe to community solar. So the next one. And how does community solar work? Basically, you will subscribe to a larger energy system somewhere in a city, maybe install in a warehouse. Somebody owns that system. And then you just go through a third-party provider, look for whether you can subscribe to there. You sign up. There's a 12-month term. There's auto renewal. And if you move from one place to another and take your account with you, then you are able to just carry on with that installation, subscription for that installation, and then there is no cancellation fee. If you're interested, through the accelerator, we're happy to connect you through our partners at Solar One and others, community solar subscribers that can help you set up that structure. Next slide.
Great. Thank you so much, Jose. We are wrapping up with the presentation. We'll move into the Q&A in just a moment. Just wanted to share, we have, as Jose mentioned, we have several events coming up. Most recently, we have the rooftop tour at the Greenwich in Long Island City. That is next Tuesday, July 19th, from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. We have 2 one-hour time slots. I dropped the link in the chat, and when we send our follow-up email later today, you will have links to register for that event. We are also hosting a workshop, solar workshop, where we'll be covering much of this similar content, but there will also be an opportunity to network with others in the field and engage in person. This will be in person and online at the Andromeda Advantage. It's also in Long Island City. So you'll be able to get that link and register for that after when we send our follow-up email later today. So we had a lot of really great questions coming through in the chat. I'm going to invite Jose and Saad to join me back on camera as we dive into these questions, and I will moderate for you. So, great. And alrighty. So one of the first questions we saw earlier was from Augustine. How does the New York City grid manage instances of excess electricity injected into the grid?
So when you have, basically New York City grid wants much more solar or much more renewable energy technology right at home, because otherwise they are importing the electricity from somewhere else. So there is like some loss. So while you are producing electricity right at that moment through your energy system, the grid is using that electricity right away. It's using it because it's needed somewhere in the city. So how it happens is that when you're injecting much more electricity to that grid, then the grid is tracking through your meter how much electricity you're producing, and that electricity is being credited back to your building for that solar energy production.
Thank you. And Ariel asked, does this program also cover parking lot solar installations or only rooftop?
We do all of the above. So if you have a parking lot solar, like if your building allows for a carport system, we will design and we will get creative with you, and we will seek bids for your projects. It just happens that most of New York City buildings rarely have parking spaces, but if there's like a parking lot that is available, we will help you like also design and track how much electricity could be produced from there. We have a building actually here in Harlem that is looking to do a parking carport and also rooftop solar on the roof.
Great. And I believe this question came in before you extensively reviewed the available incentives, but Amit asked, does New York City help to pay with incentives for preparing an older roof to become ready for solar?
I don't believe New York City as the city as a whole helps pay for the roof. What can happen is that you could, and by no means I'm an accountant, no, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not saying that this is what is, but in my experience working with other buildings, they have been able to prepare the roof for solar, and then they could bundle some of the costs together and say and justify the preparation of the roof for solar, and then get the maximum incentives in terms of the federal, the state, and the property tax abatement tax credits, in order to, by saying, we needed to prepare the roof to have a solar energy system. And if you work with your accountant and the roofer and the solar installer together, then you can make that justification possible. But again, I'm not an accountant, I'm not a lawyer. It's just in my experience, this has happened, and for whatever it's worth, 100% of the time it has been successful.
Thank you. And Matthew asked about if the fire department has begun allowing battery installs.
It's very difficult to install batteries in the city right now, because, as you know, there is still like some constraints to, like, the fire department needs to like make sure that you're keeping everybody safe in that building. If something does happen, a leak, or universe forbidding, like an explosion or something, like, it could be very dangerous. So the fire department is being very cautious. There are some sites that are allowing battery backup, but that's much more for resiliency purposes. And at this time also, it is not cost effective to install battery and solar on your roof. So we usually suggest that you stick to connecting it back to the grid also, so you can claim the most incentives as well.
Thank you. And Rebecca asked, does landmarks preservation allow canopy style panels?
Not if they are visible to the eye. So if you are able to put a canopy system that is not visible to the eye from any street view, then you may be able to do it, but you have to work with the landmarks department to make sure that the canopy system is not altering the appearance of the historical appearance of that building. That's why, landmarks, like the solar installer will work really closely with the building, with the landmark preservation department, and everybody else involved, to make sure that that is part of the equation.
And Lily was asking, how many projects in New York City have used solar for domestic hot water? I imagine you don't have the exact number off the top of your head right now, Jose, but do you have a sense of, is this something that's common?
So I want to clarify her question. I'm not sure if she's referring to solar thermal, which is like a way to use solar, like for heating water, but we don't focus on solar thermal. But just to clarify, we focus only on PV technology, which is solar for electricity. You can install solar for electricity and use that to, like, as part of your whole building's structural heating part, integrating the heating system if it's electric. But solar thermal is not as cost effective as solar PV right now. So when we do solar energy technical assistance on our end, we basically ask for Con Edison bills, which tell us how much electricity that building used over a period of time, usually 12 months, and then we can design the system and calculate how much you will need. And if water heating is included as part of that electricity cost, then we would be able to integrate that into the solar PV design.
And thank you, Jose. And Parayak, I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name, asked, will the incentive be available for BIPV wall panels, or is it only available for roofs?
They may be available, but BIPV wall panels are not good right now. They're extremely costly. They're not recommended. There's a lot of shading throughout the city. I don't think that is something that we would suggest. I mean, technology is getting more and more creative, but at this time, I believe that solar on roof is the best option.
Thank you. And Elena asked, what happens when a co-op building, when in a co-op building, each unit is individually metered by Con Edison?
Yes, so that's why we said that the best way to install solar on your roof right now is by first offsetting the common area of your building. So we would ask for a 12 months worth of Con Edison bills for the common area first. And if you have individual metering on your buildings, then like if you want to increase the size of your solar system, then you can provide electricity to offset some of the unit's electricity costs, but it is best to start with the common area.
And Christine asked, are people allowed to design their own canopy with an engineer?
You will still have to, the solar installers will still have to be part of the equation, and they usually will have their own team of engineers, and they will design the system. Of course, the building has an input on how they want that design. We've worked on buildings that wanted to have a canopy system because they wanted to have a kitchenette underneath the canopy, and they wanted to have like a hangout space where people can congregate and make it like a lounge. And the canopy system is providing electricity, but it's also part of the structure of what the building envisioned for their own future.
Thank you. And Keiston asked, are electric and roof upgrades part of upfront costs for incentive purposes?
For roof upgrade, if you want to bundle solar and roof, yes, you can take advantage of the federal tax credit and the state tax credit and the property tax abatement, not for the New York Sun incentive, because the New York Sun incentive is slated at $1 per watt, right? So if it's like, depending on the size of your system, they'll give you $1.20. If it's under 200, $1. If it's over 200 kilowatt DC to up to a megawatt, and 50 cents if it's over a megawatt. But if you need to prepare the roof for solar, again, I'm not an accountant, and I'm not saying that, I'm just based on experience. This is how it has worked. Buildings have been able to bundle the total cost of what they paid for roof upgrade plus the upfront cost of solar to claim the most out of their incentive levels for the federal and state and property tax abatement.
Thank you. And this may be a good question for Saad. We saw Rebecca said that she's working with a 100-year-old building, and they plan to redo their roof soon. How heavy are solar energy systems, and would they likely need to add structural support?
Oh, that's a great question. So I think that we engineers usually evaluate that on a case-to-case basis. Most panels are somewhere about 50 to 60 pounds each, and then you add in all the structure elements. So usually there will be an engineering study done and a survey that includes a structural feasibility as well. And that will determine if there's any reinforcement that needs to be done prior to putting up solar.
Thanks, Saad. And I see that another question from Neil. If the building roof size is large, can you install more panels than the energy requirements of the common areas, enabling you to return more energy to the grid?
You can, if it is behind the meter, you are allowed to only build up to 110% of what you had used the year before in electricity. Otherwise, your crediting will be minimal. Then if you do community distributed generation, you can overbuild as much as you can and then return some of that electricity back to other accounts. It could be your supers account, the common area account, some of the units accounts, or all of the units accounts. So.
Great. Mark asks, is there any reason not to subscribe to community solar immediately while evaluating when or if to install our own solar generation?
There is no reason. I think that if you are willing and able to subscribe to a community solar project right now, please do so. I 100% encourage you to do it. And you can contact, you can do it individually for your own unit or your own apartment. And then if you want to do it for your building's common area, do so as well while you're making a decision to go solar. What does happen is that if you are a subscriber to Community Solar Project and then you have installed a system, you may not double dip. So once that your system does go live, you will probably have to unsubscribe to that Community Solar Project and then use the benefits from your system itself.
Great. And I think you answered the next question I was going to tee up, which is about individual versus whole building. So we're going to wrap up. We can take maybe one or two more questions, but we're coming up to time. I did see one question going back to one of our case studies. Is the Greenwich building a canopy or is it another kind?
It's a ballasted.
Okay, great. Judith, if you're still with us, you asked, can you send us a link for getting our roof evaluated? NYC Accelerator is here to help. We conduct free solar feasibility assessments, so we can follow up with you after the event. All right. Oh, did you want to add something,
Yeah,
Jose?
there is a question about wind loads, and I just want to say that the wind load for the wind solar energy system have to be able to withstand 120 miles per hour wind in order to be installed, and that is all worked with the New York City Fire Department and the engineers of the installer, as well as the Department of Buildings. Otherwise, they will not allow for a system to go on top of your roof. So it's really important that they are able to withstand that. And that's, I think, a category 3 or 4 hurricane, which we have not experienced here in New York City.
Yeah, and I see one other question I want to address before we wrap up. Somebody asked about the combination of solar and green roofs. Will NYC Accelerator provide technical assistance with both? And the answer is yes.
Yes.
So with that, we're going to wrap up today. Thank you all so much for a very lively discussion, for tuning in with us. We hope you can join us at one of our future events, whether it is our rooftop tour next week or our hybrid workshop in a few weeks. You can contact our team of experts at any time for any of your questions. We are here to help you. You can also submit your contact information if you would like to be in touch and you didn't indicate that on your registration at the link that I just dropped into the chat. Thank you all so much for your time. Have a great rest of the day and contact us if you need us.